6 months after my son's wedding, the photographer called me urgently. "Ma'am, I found something in the photos. Come to my studio tonight. Please don't tell your son yet. You need to see this first." I hung up the phone, feeling like someone had just thrown ice water down my spine. The devastation I felt destroyed everything I thought I knew about that day. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to how this nightmare began. 6 months ago, I thought I was watching my only son, David, marry the love of his life. Jessica Miller seemed perfect on paper, blonde, bubbly, and supposedly head over heels for my 32-year-old son. As a 58-year-old widow who'd raised David alone after his father died when he was 12, I was just grateful to see him happy. The wedding had been a lavish affair at the Rosewood Country Club. Jessica's family sparing no expense. 300 guests, 10-course dinner, open bar, and Rick Brennan as the photographer, the most sought-after wedding photographer in Dallas. I remembered thinking how lucky David was to have in-laws who could afford such extravagance. My teacher's pension certainly couldn't have covered it. But now, staring at Rick's business card in my trembling hand, I realized that luck might have been the wrong word entirely. Rick Brennan's studio was located in the Arts District, a converted warehouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. When I arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, the parking lot was nearly empty. Inside, Rick was waiting behind his desk, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually perfect beard was unkempt. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming," he said, standing quickly. "I've been agonizing over whether to call you for weeks." "What did you find?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. After 25 years teaching high school, I'd learned to spot trouble brewing from miles away. Rick pulled out a thick folder and set it on the desk between us. I was organizing the wedding photos for my portfolio when I noticed something odd. I started looking more carefully, and he paused, running his hand through his hair. "Mrs. Thompson, I think your daughter-in-law was having an affair during the wedding reception." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "That's impossible. Jessica was with David the entire time." "Not the entire time," Rick said quietly. He opened the folder and pulled out the first photograph. This was taken at 9:47 p.m. during the father-daughter dance. I studied the image. It showed Jessica in her stunning white gown, but she wasn't on the dance floor with her father. Instead, she was near the service entrance to the kitchen, partially hidden behind a decorative column. She was embracing a man in a dark suit, definitely not David, who I could clearly see on the dance floor, looking around for his bride. "Who is that man?" I whispered. "That's what took me weeks to figure out," Rick said grimly. "His name is Marcus Cole. He's Jessica's cousin, but more importantly, he's also her secret business partner." "Cousin?" I repeated, staring at the photograph that was quickly rewriting my understanding of my son's wedding day. I remember David mentioning Jessica's cousin Marcus would be at the wedding. He seemed like a nice young man when I met him briefly at the reception. Rick pulled out another photo. "That's the thing, Mrs. Thompson. Marcus isn't just family. He and Jessica are business partners, something David doesn't know about." He handed me a printout from the Texas Secretary of State website, Cole and Miller Financial Consulting. They've been partners for 3 years, but Jessica has kept this completely hidden from David. I studied the document, feeling that familiar teacher brain kick in, the part of me that could spot a forged hall pass from across the classroom. Jessica Miller and Marcus Cole had indeed registered their business in 2022, the same year she'd started dating David. So, Jessica has been running a business with her cousin for 3 years. "And David has no idea?" I asked, though even as the words left my mouth, several unpleasant possibilities were forming in my mind. Why would she keep this secret from her husband? "Take a look at these," Rick said, spreading out a series of photos across his desk like a detective laying out evidence. The timeline he'd constructed was damning. 9:47 p.m. Jessica embracing Marcus near the kitchen. 10:15 p.m. Jessica slipping out the side door while David was making his thank you speech. 10:23 p.m. Marcus leaving through the same door. 10:45 p.m. Jessica returning slightly disheveled, claiming she'd needed fresh air. I remember that, I said slowly. David was looking for her during his speech. She said she'd felt faint and needed air. For 22 minutes, Rick raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Thompson, there's more. He pulled out his laptop and opened a folder labeled security footage. The screen showed the parking lot outside the country club from multiple angles. The club's security system backs up to the cloud. I have contacts there who helped me access the footage. He clicked play on a video timestamped 10:17 p.m. I watched Jessica emerge from the side entrance and walk quickly toward a dark sedan parked in the far corner of the lot. Marcus was already waiting by the car. They embraced again, more passionately this time, before getting into the vehicle together. 22 minutes later, Rick said quietly. They returned separately. I sank back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Jessica hadn't just cheated on David at their own wedding. She'd done it with her own cousin, who was also her secret business partner that David knew nothing about. Rick, why are you showing me this instead of going directly to David? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos spread across his desk. Because there's something else, Mrs. Thompson. Something that makes this more complicated than just an affair. More complicated how? Instead of answering directly, Rick pulled out another folder. This one labeled financial records. My teaching background might have prepared me to spot teenage troublemakers, but nothing had prepared me for what I was about to learn about financial fraud. Cole and Miller. Financial consulting specializes in investment management for elderly clients, Rick said carefully. Specifically widows and widowers with substantial assets. The pieces were clicking together with sickening clarity. How do you know all this? I asked Rick, though I was beginning to suspect the answer wouldn't be comforting. Because my mother was one of their clients, he said quietly. She died 8 months ago, and when I was settling her estate, I discovered some irregularities. Rick opened his laptop again and pulled up a series of bank statements. My mother, Ella Brennan, was 74 and had early-stage dementia. Someone referred her to Cole and Miller Financial Consulting 18 months ago. They convinced her to transfer her investments to their management. How much? I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. $450,000, her entire life savings. I felt my mouth go dry. What happened to it? That's what I've been trying to figure out. The official records show various high-risk investments that supposedly failed. But when I hired a forensic accountant, we found that most of those investments never existed. Rick pulled out a thick folder filled with financial documents. Mrs. Thompson, I believe your daughter-in-law and Marcus Cole are running an elaborate con targeting elderly people. They find vulnerable seniors, gain their trust, then systematically drain their accounts. But Jessica's only 29. How would she even know how to do something like that? She's not working alone, Rick said grimly. We think there's a larger network involved. Jessica and Marcus handle the client relationships, but someone else is managing the paperwork and moving the money. I stared at the wedding photos again, seeing them in an entirely new light, so the affair might not even be romantic. Rick finished. They could have been coordinating business during the reception, planning their next target, discussing current cases. Or both, I said, feeling nauseous. Rick, why haven't you gone to the police with this?
I have.
Detective Sarah Martinez is building a case, but she needs more evidence. The financial trail is complex and the victims, he paused. Many of them are elderly people with memory issues, not ideal witnesses. What about your mother? Can't you prove fraud in her case? Rick's expression darkened. She's dead, Mrs. Thompson. And according to the coroner, she died of natural causes, heart failure brought on by stress. But I can't help wondering what kind of stress a sweet old lady would be under if she discovered her life savings had been stolen. The implication hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Jessica wasn't just a cheating wife. She might be involved in crimes that had literally scared an elderly woman to death. What do you need from me? I asked. Information about David's finances. About your finances. I need to know if Jessica has access to any significant accounts, if she's pressured David into making investments, if she's mentioned elderly relatives or friends who might need financial advice. I thought about the past year, replaying conversations and interactions with Jessica. She's been very interested in my retirement accounts, I said slowly. She's offered several times to review my investments. Said she had connections who could get me better returns. Rick leaned forward. Did you let her?
No.
I've been managing my own finances since my husband died 15 years ago. I told her I was happy with my current arrangements. I paused. But David has been pressuring me to reconsider. Says Jessica is just trying to help family. Mrs. Thompson, Rick said carefully. I think you and David are their next targets. Next targets? The words echoed in my head like a warning bell. I thought about every interaction I'd had with Jessica over the past year, every seemingly innocent question about my retirement, every offer to help with paperwork. How sure are you about this? I asked Rick. Sure enough that I've been losing sleep for weeks, he replied. Mrs. Thompson, can I ask you some personal questions? I nodded, though every instinct was telling me I wouldn't like where this was heading. Do you own your home outright? Yes, paid it off 5 years ago. Significant retirement savings between my teacher's pension, my husband's life insurance, and my 401k.
Yes.
Any investments Jessica would know about? I thought carefully. David mentioned my portfolio a few times when Jessica was around. He's always been proud that his school teacher mother managed to build a comfortable nest egg. Rick made notes on a legal pad. Have they invited you to any financial seminars? Introduced you to any investment advisors? Suggested any changes to your estate planning? Actually, yes. The memory came flooding back. 2 months ago, Jessica invited me to something she called a retirement security workshop. Said it was specifically for educators and would show me how to maximize my pension benefits. Did you go?
No.
I had a parent-teacher conference that night, but Jessica seemed disappointed when I led. I paused. She rescheduled it twice, trying to find a time I could attend. Rick and I looked at each other across the desk, both understanding the implications. If Jessica was part of a larger financial fraud operation, a retirement security workshop would be the perfect hunting ground for elderly targets with substantial assets. Rick, I need to see more of these photos. All of them. He hesitated. Mrs. Thompson, some of these are difficult to look at. If David is truly innocent in all this, these images will destroy him. If David is innocent, then he deserves to know what kind of woman he married before she destroys him financially. I straightened my shoulders. Show me everything. Rick opened the largest folder yet. These are the photos I couldn't include in the official wedding album. What I saw over the next 30 minutes painted a picture of a wedding reception that was actually an elaborate business meeting. Jessica and Marcus weren't just stealing moments for romantic encounters. They were conducting systematic meetings with various guests throughout the evening. Who is this man? I asked, pointing to a photo of Jessica in deep conversation with an elderly gentleman by the bar. Herbert Williams, 83 years old. He attended the wedding as Jessica's honorary grandfather.
No actualización.
He invested his Social Security savings with Cole and Miller Financials 6 weeks after the wedding. And this woman, Patricia Dean, 79, Marcus's aunt. She transferred her late husband's pension to their management 2 weeks after meeting them at your son's reception. I felt sick. They used David's wedding as a networking event. It appears so. Mrs. Thompson. I've identified at least 12 people at that reception who became clients of Cole and Miller Financial within 2 months of the wedding. The total assets they've managed to access so far exceed $2 million. What about the people who didn't invest? Some of them are harder to track, but 3 elderly guests have died in the past 6 months, all from stress-related conditions, all after making significant investments with Jessica and Marcus. The room was spinning. My son's wedding hadn't been a celebration. It had been a carefully orchestrated crime scene. And David, my sweet, trusting son, had unknowingly provided the perfect cover for it all. Rick, we have to tell David tonight. Mrs. Thompson, wait. Rick grabbed my arm gently as I started to stand. There's one more thing you need to know before we involve David.
What now?
I think Jessica knows I've been investigating. What do you mean she knows? The question came out sharper than I intended, but Rick's words had sent a chill down my spine. 3 days ago, someone broke into my studio. Nothing was stolen, but my computer files were accessed, specifically the folder containing the wedding photos and my research into Cole and Miller Financial. I sank back into my chair. Are you sure it was Jessica? The break-in happened the same night Jessica had dinner with David at Romano's, the restaurant directly across from my studio. The security footage shows someone entering my building at 9:47 p.m. Jessica and David's dinner receipt is timestamped 9:52 p.m. So, she could have slipped out during dinner. The restaurant's bathroom is on the second floor, right next to a fire exit that leads to the alley behind my building. She could have excused herself, broken in, accessed my files, and been back at the table in 15 minutes. My teacher instincts were screaming. This was the behavior of someone who'd been cheating on tests her whole life. Always one step ahead. Always with an alibi. What did she find on your computer? Everything we've discussed tonight, the photos, the financial records, my mother's case, the list of elderly victims. Rick ran his hand through his hair. Mrs. Thompson, if Jessica knows we're onto her, she might accelerate whatever timeline she has for David and you. Meaning she might try to access your assets immediately before we can expose her. I thought about the phone call I'd received just this morning. Jessica asking if I'd reconsidered her offer to review my investment portfolio. Her voice had been unusually urgent, almost desperate. She called me today. I told Rick, said she had some time-sensitive investment opportunities that would be perfect for someone in my situation. Rick's expression darkened. What kind of opportunities? Something about municipal bonds with guaranteed returns. She wanted to set up a meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Mrs. Thompson, legitimate municipal bonds don't have guaranteed returns above market rate. She's trying to set you up.
But why now?
If she's been planning this for a year, why the sudden urgency? Rick pulled out his phone and showed me a news article dated 3 days ago. Because this story broke in the Dallas Business Journal, local investment firm under investigation for elder fraud. They don't name Cole and Miller specifically, but word is getting out that the FBI is building cases against financial advisors targeting seniors. I read the article twice, my heart racing. So Jessica is trying to cash out before the investigation reaches her.
Exactly.
Mrs. Thompson, I think tomorrow's meeting is her end game. She's going to try to get you to transfer everything. I stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the parking lot. The same parking lot where Jessica had conducted her secret business during what should have been the happiest night of my son's life. Rick, we have to stop her. But if we go to David with this now without absolute proof, she'll just deny everything and disappear. We'll never be able to help the other victims. What are you suggesting? I turned back to face him, feeling that familiar determination that had carried me through 15 years of single motherhood and 25 years of dealing with teenage drama. I'm suggesting we give Jessica exactly what she wants. Tomorrow's meeting, but with a few modifications she's not expecting. Mrs. Thompson, that's extremely dangerous. If Jessica is as desperate as we think she is. Rick, I've spent my entire career dealing with manipulative teenagers who think they're smarter than the adults around them. Trust me, I know how to handle someone like Jessica. What did you have in mind? I smiled, feeling more clear-headed than I had all evening. We're going to let Jessica think she's won, and then we're going to destroy her. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that comes from finally understanding the true nature of a problem. I'd spent the night researching everything I could find about investment fraud, elder abuse, and the legal requirements for recording conversations in Texas. By 6 a.m., I had a plan. Rick had connected me with Detective Sarah Martinez the night before, and she'd agreed to meet us at 7 a.m. at a coffee shop near the police station. Sarah turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, with a kind of non-nonsense demeanor I recognized from years of dealing with school administrators. Mrs. Thompson, she said, settling into our corner booth with a large black coffee. Rick has filled me in on the situation. I have to say, what you're proposing is risky. More risky than letting Jessica steal from more elderly people, I countered. Fair point, but if this goes wrong, you could be putting yourself in physical danger. We don't know how desperate Jessica and her partners are. I pulled out my phone and showed Sarah the text I'd received at 6:30 a.m. Margaret, so excited about our meeting today. I found an investment opportunity that could double your retirement savings in 6 months. Can we move our meeting to 2 p.m. instead? I have the paperwork ready. Jessica, 6 months to double my money, I said dryly. That doesn't sound suspicious at all. Detective Martinez laughed despite herself. Okay, I can see why you want to nail her, but we need to do this legally and safely. Over the next hour, we worked out the details. I would meet Jessica as planned, but Detective Martinez would be listening from the next room with a recording device. Rick would be positioned outside with backup officers. Most importantly, I would not sign anything or transfer any actual money. The goal is to get her to explicitly state what she's doing and how the scheme works. Detective Martinez explained, if we can get her to admit fraud on tape, especially with details about other victims, we'll have enough for a conviction. What about Marcus and the rest of their network? One step at a time. If we can flip Jessica, she might give us the bigger fish. At 1:45 p.m., I arrived at Jessica's office building in downtown Dallas. The suite number she'd given me led to a generic office space with temporary furniture and motivational posters that looked like they'd been purchased at a gas station. Classic temporary setup designed to look legitimate, but easy to abandon quickly. Jessica greeted me with an enthusiastic hug and her usual million-dollar smile. Margaret, you look wonderful. I'm so glad you decided to take control of your financial future. Well, you've been so persistent, I said, settling into the uncomfortable folding chair across from her desk. And David speaks so highly of your expertise. David is such a sweetheart. He just wants the best for his mother. Jessica pulled out a thick folder. Now, I've been working with my partner Marcus to identify some exclusive opportunities that would be perfect for someone with your background and assets. Your partner Marcus? I asked innocently. I don't think David's mentioned him. A brief flicker of something crossed Jessica's face. Marcus handles the more sophisticated investment strategies. He works behind the scenes mostly. I'd love to meet him. Is he here today? Unfortunately, no. He's closing a major deal for another client.
But don't worry.
I have full authority to handle your account. Jessica opened the folder and pulled out several official-looking documents. Now, I'll need some basic information about your current holdings. For the next 20 minutes, I fed Jessica carefully crafted lies about my financial situation, inflating my assets just enough to make me an attractive target, but not so much that she'd become suspicious. She took detailed notes, asking probing questions about my accounts, my beneficiaries, and my estate planning. The opportunity one want to discuss with you today, Jessica said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, is something we only offer to very special clients. Municipal bonds backed by offshore tax shelters that guarantee a 25% return in 6 months. That sounds too good to be true, I said, playing the cautious grandmother perfectly. That's what all our clients say initially. Jessica laughed. But Margaret, we've never had a client lose money on this program. Never. In fact, Mrs. Patterson from your neighborhood just doubled her Social Security investments with us last month. Mrs. Patterson? My heart sank. Ella Lehner Patterson was 87 years old and had been showing signs of memory problems for months. Really? Eleanor invested with you? Oh, yes. She's one of our most successful clients. In fact, Jessica lowered her voice. She's already made enough profit to buy that new car she's been wanting. That was impossible. Ella Lehner didn't drive anymore and had been talking about selling her car for months. Jessica was either lying about Ella Lehner's success or lying about Ella Lehner's involvement entirely. How much would I need to invest to see those kinds of returns? I asked. Jessica's eyes lit up with predatory excitement. For the full program, we recommend transferring all liquid assets to maximize the compound growth potential. She had just walked directly into Detective Martinez's trap. All liquid assets. I repeated, letting my voice carry just the right amount of elderly confusion mixed with greed. That seems like quite a lot to invest at once. Margaret, I understand your hesitation, but think about it. You've worked your whole life, sacrificed so much to build your nest egg. Don't you deserve to see it grow dramatically in your golden years? Jessica leaned forward, her expression shifting into what I recognized as practiced sincerity. After dealing with manipulative teenagers for 25 years, I could spot fake empathy from across a football field. The thing is, she continued, this opportunity has a very limited window. My offshore partners can only accept a certain number of new investors each quarter, and we're down to the last two spots. Classic high-pressure sales tactics. Create artificial scarcity to force quick decisions. How much time do I have to decide? Ideally, we'd want to submit your paperwork today. I know it seems fast, but Margaret, I've seen too many people miss out on life-changing opportunities because they waited too long. Jessica pulled out a transfer authorization form that looked official enough to fool most people. But I'd spent years grading papers, and I could spot a document that had been hastily created in Microsoft Word. This form would give you authorization to move my funds, just temporarily, while we set up your new investment accounts. It's a standard procedure. Jessica's smile never wavered, but I caught her glancing at her watch. The offshore markets close at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so we do need to move quickly. Before I sign anything, could you tell me more about some of your other successful clients besides Eleanor Patterson? Jessica hesitated for just a moment. Well, there's Herbert Williams. He's made over $200,000 in profits this year. Herbert Williams. Rick had identified him as one of the elderly guests from David's wedding who'd lost his entire Social Security savings to coal and Miller Financial.
That's wonderful, I said.
Could I speak with Herbert? Get his recommendation directly. Oh, Herbert is traveling in Europe right now, enjoying his profits, Jessica said quickly. But I can show you his account statements. She pulled out a document that purported to show Herbert's investment gains. The numbers looked impressive until you realized they were printed on regular paper with no official letterhead or verification. I'd seen more convincing fake report cards from students trying to avoid parent conferences. Jessica, can I ask you something personal? Of course, Margaret. I want you to feel completely comfortable with this process. How did you become so knowledgeable about investments? David mentioned you work in marketing. Another flicker across her face. I do work in marketing, but I've been studying financial management as a side interest. Marcus has been mentoring me, teaching me about international markets and specialized investment vehicles. How did you meet Marcus? Marcus is my cousin. We grew up in the same area. He helped me get started in this business. Jessica's answers were becoming shorter, more clipped. She was clearly uncomfortable with questions that strayed from her sales script. And the two of you decided to help elderly people specifically. We focus on mature investors because they often have assets that aren't working as hard as they could be. People like you, Margaret, who've been conservative with their money, but deserve to see real growth. That's very thoughtful of you. I paused, pretending to study the transfer form. Jessica, I have to ask. David doesn't know about your business partnership with Marcus. Does he? What do you mean? I mean, you haven't told him about your investment business, about being business partners with your cousin, about any of this. Jessica's mask slipped completely for just a moment, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. David doesn't need to worry about financial matters. He's focused on his career, and I handle our investment strategies. Our investment strategies? So, David's money is involved, too. Just small amounts so far. Nothing significant. Jessica glanced at her watch again. Margaret, I really do need a decision today. This opportunity. I'll do it, I said suddenly. Jessica's face lit up with genuine surprise and delight. Really? Oh, Margaret, you're making such a smart choice. You won't regret this. I just need to make one quick phone call to my bank to confirm some account numbers, I said, pulling out my phone. Is that okay? Of course. Take your time. I stepped into the hallway and pretended to dial my bank while actually texting Detective Martinez. She's admitting to investing David's money without his knowledge. Keep recording. When I returned to the office, Jessica had multiple forms spread across her desk. Okay,